Now that we've learned how to solve rational equations, we're going to learn how to solve rational inequalities, which is slightly different because when we're solving rational inequalities, I need to get a 0 on the right-hand side, and then we're going to do a sign chart. So my first step is to move my terms to the left side. Then we get a common denominator, just like normal solving, factor the numerator and denominator, find critical values, that's what makes the numerator 0 and denominator 0. From those critical values, we make a sign chart, just like when we did quadratic inequalities, and answer the question, are we less than 0, greater than 0, do we have equal to's? What we need to be careful of that we didn't have to watch with quadratics is the denominator, which cannot be 0. So whatever is in the denominator, I'm going to make sure I'm not using straight brackets for that value. So let's look at our first problem. Our first problem is equal to, has all my terms on the left-hand side. I have 0 on the right. I only have one fraction, so it has a common denominator. It's factored, so I can go ahead and find my critical values, which are -5, +4. Make sure you're putting these in least to greatest like it's a number line. I'm going to put my factors on the left and do a sign chart. Now, one thing that's going to help because these problems get larger, if I'm at x plus 5, then one hint is that if I'm to the left of this little dotted line, if I'm to the left of -5, I'm going to be minus. And as soon as I cross that line, it's going to be plus. Because really, if I graph the line y equals x plus 5, it looks like that. And it's negative to the left of -5 and positive to the right. This just makes life a lot easier. So then if I think about that with 4, it's going to be negative to the left, positive to the right. And now we do negative times negative is a positive, positive times negative is a negative, positive times positive is positive. Before I write my answer, I'm going to think about what's in my denominator. So what's in my denominator is x minus 4. So I, no matter what, can only do parentheses when I get to the 4. Now let's actually answer the question. So my question is less than or equal to 0, which means I'm talking about negative. So in my sign chart, here's the part that's negative. Since it has the equal to, I can be equal to -5, and I'm going to go up to 4. 4 is in the denominator, so I need parentheses. If I look at problem 2, I do not have 0 on the right-hand side. By the way, technically I can move stuff to the right side, but just trust me, we want everything to be on the left. It just makes things easier. So first I'm going to move my 3 over, so x plus 32 over x plus 6 is minus 3, less than or equal to 0. Now I need a common denominator. That 3 is really over 1, so I'm going to multiply the numerator by x plus 6 and the denominator by x plus 6. So that would give me x plus 32 minus 3 times x plus 6 all over a common denominator of x plus 6 is less than or equal to 0. And when I simplify that, I get negative 3x minus 18. So negative 2x plus 14 all over x plus 6 is less than or equal to 0. Now I want to factor the numerator and denominator if I can. I do have a GCF in the numerator, and I'm going to take that out. And I want you to take out that negative 2, which would leave me with x minus 7 is less than or equal to 0 all over x plus 6. So now we're going to be super careful when we make this sign chart because my critical values are -6 and +7. I don't have a 0 because I don't have an x right there. If I had an x right there, I would need a 0 on my number line. But I am going to include that -2 on my sign chart. Why do I need to do this? Well, it's a -2, so that's going to change my sign when I deal with that. So my -2 is always going to be negative, so I'm going to do a row of negatives. Now if I look at x minus 7, that means it's going to be negative to the left of 7, positive to the right. I look at my 6. It's going to be negative to the left of negative 6, positive to the right. And now I'm going to multiply down. Negative times a negative is a positive, times a negative is a negative. Negative times negative is positive, times positive is positive. Negative times positive is negative, times another positive is negative. I could obviously look for values and substitute in, but at this point, thinking about left and right of your critical value is going to be faster. Now we need to answer the question. I do need to be careful what's in my denominator is that 6, so I need to remember that is going to have to be parentheses no matter what. It's less than or equal to 0, which means I'm looking for negatives. Where do I have negatives? Here and here. So we're saying from negative infinity to negative 6, so I need a parentheses, union, bracket, 7 to positive infinity. This is a bracket because in my inequality, I have the equal to. Looking at the next one, I have everything on one side. It's all one fraction. And my next step is going to be to factor the numerator and denominator. The numerator is fine. Negative 24, negative 5, negative 8, and 3. So it's going to factor to x plus 6 over x minus 8, x plus 3, greater than or equal to 0. Man, all these have equal to's, which is making life interesting. So I'm going to go to the right and do my sign chart. So my critical values, least to greatest, are negative 6, negative 3, and positive 8. And then I'm going to put x plus 6, x plus 3, x minus 8. And now we do our sign chart. So if I'm at x plus 6, that means we're thinking to the left of negative 6 is negative, to the right is positive. Looking at x plus 3, we're looking at left of negative 3 is negative, to the right is positive. And last, I have x minus 8, negative, 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 positive. And now multiply down. Negative, negative, negative will be negative. Positive, negative, negative will be positive. Positive, positive, negative will be negative. Positive, positive, positive will be positive. Back to the question, greater than or equal to 0. So that means we're looking at positives. So here's positive, here's positive. What is in my denominator? In my denominator is my 8. In my denominator is my negative 3. So those have to be parentheses. So my two intervals would be negative 6 with a straight bracket to negative 3 parentheses union parentheses 8 to positive infinity. Once again, parentheses are here because they're in the denominator. Bracket is here because it says greater than or equal to. Looking at our last problem, we have two fractions on either side of the equation. Pro tip is to move everything to the left. And remember that negative, I'm just going to move to the numerator as a negative 10. Otherwise, I have to distribute it to the denominator, and that seems like a pain. X minus 6 is greater than or equal to 0. I do not have a common denominator, so that means I'm going to need to multiply my first fraction by x minus 6 over x minus 6. I'm going to need to multiply my right fraction by x minus 5, x minus 5. So for my numerator, I'll have negative 10 x minus 6 plus 11 x minus 5 all over x minus 5, x minus 6. So my numerator is negative 10x plus 60 plus 11x minus 55 over my junk. So when I combine that, oops, I'm losing my greater than or equal to zeros. Make sure you don't do that. So that's x plus 5 over x minus 5, x minus 6. All right. So one thing, can we change this problem? Can you change this to be just greater than? Because I want to talk about at least one situation where we don't have the equal to. All right. So once again, we're just changing the problem. So my critical values are least to greatest, -5, +5, +6. Write your factors x plus 5, x minus 5, x minus 6, and do your sign chart. So x plus 5 would mean we're looking at a critical value of -5. Negative to the left, positive to the right. X minus 5 means we're looking at a critical value at 5, negative to the left, positive to the right. X minus 6, negative to the left, positive to the right. And now we multiply down. 3 negatives will make it negative, 2 negatives mean positive, 1 negative is negative, and then we'll have positive. So if we're looking for greater than 0, we're looking for my positive intervals. In my denominator, I have 5 and 6, but since I don't have the equal to, because remember, I just totally changed the problem because I want to talk about it, that means -5 will be in parentheses. -5 to 5, union, 6 to infinity. Once again, I totally just changed the problem. Okay, mathematically there wasn't a reason. I just wanted to be able to talk about one situation where it's not equal to.